Salam सभी को. I'm making this video today to read a few letters. I'm not going to read entire letters. I'm going to read parts of it. And because the collection of letters or the bunch of letters that I'm carrying with myself today is huge. And since they are very huge, I'm just going to read few parts from one or two letters of that collection. The collection I'm talking about is actually published in a form of book, and it's written by none other than our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, a visionary, a scientific mind to have existed, a freedom fighter, no doubt. And if you would ask me, he was the one who led India from nothingness to a level where it could compete with world market at one point of time. For a nascent nation to establish itself among the major powers of the world was a great task, and Jawaharlal Nehru achieved it for us. He made it possible with his visionary policies, with his visionary ideas, with his institutions, with his democratic institutions that he built up, with his economic institutions that he built up post-partition or post-independence. Anyway, talking less about Nehru and more about the book. The book I'm carrying in my hand is Glimpses of World History. And this book is one of a kind because it was initially not written in the form of book. It was, as I said, it was a number of letters written by Nehru to his daughter, Indira Gandhi, when she was barely 11, 12, 13. So he started writing from that time. I think Indira Gandhi was born in 1917 or 1917, because if I remember, Annie Besant का कोई session चल रहा था कांग्रेस का, and that session was attended by Kamala Nehru, and Kamala Nehru was pregnant by then. So it was the same year when she was born. And this letter is written when Nehru is jailed. This book is written when Nehru is jailed in the civil disobedience movement of 1930s. So by the time he's writing it, Indira Gandhi would be 14 or 15, something like that. And it's a conversation of a father with his daughter. In a very tender manner, in a very lucid manner, he has tried to explain her daughter or tell a story of the world. It's actually the story of world, and letter by letter, he uncovers the chapters of the world history, and he writes in a manner which is comprehensible for a kid. Therefore, this book is also special. It's actually a personal take on world history. If you ask me, it's not a scholarly book. No doubt Nehru was a great scholar, but this book was not written with a scholarly perspective. Also, the kind of scholarly perspective that we see today in history did not exist back then. So whatever Nehru could furnish in this book was the best of its time, because he was one of the best scholars of his time, one of the best politicians of his time, a very knowledgeable person. So the kind of knowledge that he has showcased here is special, because back then the historical sense, as we say it, did not exist. And he is writing, please keep in mind, he is writing this book when Indian history was dominated by colonial interpretation of it. And he is challenging all of it, and he is narrating his own story. So therefore this book is also special. I am making this video just to recite some parts of its first and last letter. So the first letter is dated October 26, 1930 from Naini Jail, Central Prison. And the last letter which I want to read is dated 1933. So it's taking almost 4 years for him to complete all the collection of letters. And when I was reading the biography of Indira Gandhi by I'm forgetting the name of the writer. It's a very good biography written for her. The name of the book is Indira. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the writer, the biographer. So in that book, I remember that Indira Gandhi had not read all these letters for a long time for a long period in her life. But later on, she realized that she must go through these ones, and she had collected it. And later on, she unfurled all the letters, read it, and it gave her a new perspective. So एक तो ये जानना बड़ा मुश्किल है कि आज के ज़माने में जब रील्स पढ़ने का, रील्स देखने का एक चलन है, और हमारा पेशेंस लेवल इतना कम हो गया है कि हम 10 सेकंड में कंटेंट की अच्छाई और बुराई देखकर उसको फ्लिप करते जाते हैं। उस ज़माने में हमारे पास पेशेंस इतना कम है कि हम इस तरह की चीज़ें पढ़ पाएँ। तो ये संवाद एक बाप और बेटी के बीच में हो रहा है, और इतना इंटेंस और इतना एलाबरेट संवाद है, ये शायद उसी वक्त उसी दौर में पॉसिबल हो सकता था। अब ऐसे कॉन्वर्सेशंस देखने को मिलते नहीं हैं। सो लेट्स गो थ्रू सम ऑफ द parts of these letters. This is the first letter. I'm reading some parts of the first letter. The year you were born in, 1917, was one of the memorable years of history, when a great leader with a heart full of love and sympathy for the poor and suffering made his people write a noble and never to be forgotten chapter in history. In the very month in which you were born, Lenin started the Great Revolution, which has changed the face of Russia and Siberia. And today in India, another great leader, also full of love for all who suffer and passionately eager to help them, has inspired our people to great endeavor and noble sacrifice, so that they may again be free. So that they may again be free. Bapuji lies in prison, but the magic of his message steals into the hearts of India's millions, and men and women and even little children come out of their little shells and become India's soldiers of freedom. In India, today we are making history, and you and I are fortunate to see this happening before our eyes and to take some part ourselves in this great drama. This part I like the most, the next part that I am reading from the first letter. Never do anything in secret or anything that you would wish to hide. So this is a father teaching to his daughter. Never do anything in secret or anything that you wish to hide. For the desire to hide anything means that you are afraid, and fear is a bad thing and unworthy of you. For the desire to hide anything means that you are afraid, and fear is a bad thing and unworthy of you. Be brave, and all the rest follows. Then he also goes on explaining that when I say that never do anything in hiding, that doesn't mean I am trying to infringe your privacy. He is also differentiating secrecy and privacy. Next he says, we have nothing to hide. We are not afraid of what we do and what we say. We work in the sun and in the light. Even so, in our private lives, let us make friends with the sun and work in the light and do nothing secretively or furtively. Privacy, of course, we may have and should have. Privacy, of course, we may have and should have, but that is a very different thing from secrecy. So he goes on explaining that I'm not asking you to not be private, but secrecy is not desirable. But that is a very different thing from secrecy. And if you do so, my dear, you will grow up as a child of the light, unafraid and serene and unfurled, unruffled, whatever may happen. Next, again, there are some parts. One is, to read history is good, but even more interesting and fascinating is to help in making history. Man's growth from barbarism to civilization is supposed to be the theme of history. There is enough of want of cooperation today, of one country or people selfishly attacking or oppressing another, of one man exploiting another. If after millions of years of progress we are still so backward and imperfect, how much longer will it take for us to learn to behave as sensible and reasonable people? If mutual cooperation and sacrifice for the good of society are the tests of civilization, we may say that the white ant and the ant are in this respect superior to man. I would repeat, if mutual cooperation and sacrifice for the good of society are the tests of civilization, we may say that the white ant and the ant are in respect superior to man. It's an interesting para. He's arguing, why should we shout Inqilab Zindabad? Why should we shout Inqilab Zindabad? Why should we want revolution and change? India, of course, wants a big change today. But even after the big change that we all want, has come and India is independent, we cannot rest quiescent. We cannot be quiet. Nothing in the world that is alive remains unchanging. All nature changes from day to day and minute to minute. Only the dead stop growing and are the quiet ones. Fresh water runs on, and if you stop it, it becomes stagnant. So also it is with life of man and the life of the nation. So also it is with the life of man and the life of nation. Whether we want or not, we grow old. Babies become little girls. Girls become big girls, and grown-up women, and eventually they become old women. We have to put up with these changes. But there are many who refuse to admit that the world changes. There are many who refuse. They keep their minds closed and locked up and will not permit any new ideas to come into them. Nothing frightens them so much as the idea of thinking. What is the result? The world moves on in spite of them. The world moves on in spite of them, and because they and people like them do not adapt themselves to the changing conditions, there are big burst-ups from time to time. There are big burst-ups. What are these burst-ups? Big revolutions take place, like the Great French Revolution of 140 years ago. 140 years ago from 1930, not today. Or the Russian Revolution 13 years ago. Even so, in our own country, we are today in the middle of a revolution. Nehru is calling the Indian freedom struggle a revolution. He's terming it as a revolution here. However, it was not a revolution. It was a struggle of independence. We know it historically now. But since he's a part of that process, he is taking the freedom to term it as a revolution. Even so, in our own country, we are today in the middle of a revolution. We want independence, of course, but we want something more. We want independence, of course, but we want something more. We want to clear out all the stagnant pools and let in clean, fresh air and water everywhere. We must sweep away the dirt and poverty and misery from our country. We must also clean up as far as we can the cobwebs from the minds of so many people which prevent them from thinking and cooperating in the great work before us. It is a great work, and it may be that it will require time. Let us at least give it a good push on. Let us at least give it a good push on. Inqilab Zindabad. And that's how he continues. Then he goes on writing so many letters which are compiled here in this humongous collection. I'm afraid whether I will be able to finish this book any day. Issue तो मैंने करा ली, but बड़ा वक्त लगेगा इसको पढ़ने में. Anyway, I'm switching to the last letter straight away because that is my favorite letter. Now he has written all of it. He has gone on to explain every major world event of world history. और उसके पहले उसने एक बड़ी टाइमलाइन भी दी है यहाँ पे. So Nehru created his own timeline. If you see, उसने इस तरह से टाइमलाइन क्रिएट की है. And this timeline also continues for I think 20-25 pages, if I'm not wrong. Yes, more than 20-25 pages, right? And after that, he starts the letters. In the last letter, he is finally talking about the nature of history and what is history. I have given you the barest outline. That is not history. They are just fleeting glimpses of our past. Therefore, the book is also named Glimpses of World History. That is not entire history. He thinks that scholarly one person sitting in a jail cannot cover the entire world history completely. So he can only put up glimpses there. So he's being very clear about it. They are just glimpses, fleeting glimpses of our long past. If history interests you, if you feel some of the fascination of history, you will find your way to many books which will help you to unravel the threads of the past ages. But reading books alone will not help. If you would know the past, you must look upon it with sympathy and with understanding. To understand a person who lived long ago, you will have to understand his environment, the conditions under which he lived, the ideas that filled his mind. It is absurd to judge the people of past or the past people as if they lived now and thought as we do. There is no one to defend slavery today, and yet the great Plato, the philosopher Plato, held that slavery was essential. Within recent time, scores of thousands of lives were given in an effort to retain slavery in United States. We cannot judge the past from the standards of the present. Everyone will unwillingly admit this, but everyone will not admit the equally absurd habit of judging the present by the standards of the past. The various religions have specially helped in petrifying old beliefs and faiths and customs, which may have had some use in the in the age and country of their birth, but which are singularly unsuitable in our present times, in our present age. If then you look upon the past history with the eyes of sympathy, the dry bones will fill up with flesh and blood, and you will see a mighty procession of living men and women and children in every age and every climate, different from us and yet very like us, with much the same human virtues and human feelings. History is not a magic show, but there is plenty of magic in it for those who has eyes to see, who have eyes to see. I'll repeat, history is not a magic show, but there is plenty of magic in it for those who have eyes to see. Innumerable pictures from the gallery of history crowd our minds. Egypt, Babylon, Nineveh, the old Indian civilizations, the coming of the Aryans to India, and their spreading out over the Europe and Asia, the wonderful record of Chinese culture, Knossos, the Greece, Imperial Rome, Byzantium, the triumphant march of the Arabs across two continents, the renaissance of Indian culture and its decay, the little known Mayans and Aztec civilizations of America, the vast conquest of Mongols, the Middle Ages in Europe with their wonderful Gothic cathedrals, the coming of Islam to India, and the Mughal Empire, the renaissance of learning and art in Western Europe, the discovery of America and the sea routes to the East, the beginnings of the Western aggression of the East, in the East, the coming of the big machine and the development of capitalism, the spread of industrialism, and the European domination and imperialism, and the wonders of science in the modern world. Great empires have risen and fallen and been forgotten by man for thousands of years, till their remains were dug up again by patient explorers from under the sands that covered them. And yet, many an idea, many a fancy has survived and proved stronger and more persistent than the empire. Then he quotes a poem. Egypt's might has tumbled down the deeps of thought. Greece is fallen, and Troy town. Glorious Rome hath lost her crown. Venice's pride is not, but the dreams their children dreamed. Fleeting, unsubstantial, vain, shadowy as the shadows seemed, airy nothing as they deemed, these remain. The empires have fallen, but the dreams of their children still remain. The past brings us many gifts. Indeed, all that we have today of culture, civilization, science, or knowledge of some aspects of the truth is a gift of the distant or recent past to us. It is right that we acknowledge our obligation to the past, but the past does not exhaust our duty or obligation. We owe a duty to the future also, and perhaps that obligation is even greater than the one we owe to the past. For the past is past and done with, we cannot change it. The future is yet to come, and perhaps we may be able to shape it a little. If the past has given us some part of truth, the future also hides many aspects of the truth and invites us to search for them. But often the past is jealous of the future and holds us in a terrible grip, and we have to struggle with it to get free to face and advance towards the future. To come out of the grips of the past, to struggle out of the shell is the main task actually in moving forward in human history. That's what he's arguing here. History, it is said, has many lessons to teach us, and there is another saying that history never repeats itself. Both are true, for we cannot learn anything from it by slavishly trying to copy it or by expecting it to repeat itself or remain stagnant. But we can learn something from it by prying behind it and trying to discover the forces that move it. by going after the forces that move it, the economic institutions, the political institutions, the thought, liberalism, uh, other thought processes that has moved history. By knowing them, we benefit. Where was I? Yeah. History, says Karl Marx, has no other way of answering old questions than by putting new ones. The old days were the days of faith, blind, unquestioning faith. The wonderful temples and mosques and cathedrals of the past centuries could never have been built but for the overpowering faith of the architects and the builders and the people generally. The very stones that they reverently put one on the top of the other or carved into beautiful designs tell us this faith. The old temple spire, the mosque with its slender minarets, the Gothic cathedral, all of them pointing upwards with an amazing intensity and devotion, as if offering a prayer in stone or marble to the sky above, thrill us even now. Though we may be lacking in that faith of old which they are which they are the embodiments of, but the days of that faith are gone. He was a scientific person. He was the man of reason. He says clearly the days of that faith, that old faith of mosques and churches and temples are gone. Thousands of temples and mosques and cathedrals continue to be built, but they lack the spirit that made them alive during the Middle Ages. There is little difference between them and the commercial offices which are so representative of our age. Our age is a different one. It is an age of disillusion, of doubt and uncertainty and questioning. We can no longer accept many of the ancient beliefs and customs. We have no more faith in them, in Asia or in Europe or America. So we search for new ways, new aspects of truth, more in harmony with our environment. And we question each other and debate and quarrel and evolve any number of isms and philosophies. As in the days of Socrates, we live in an age of questionings. But that questioning is not confined to a city like Athens, it is worldwide. Sometimes the injustice, the unhappiness, the brutality of the world oppress us and darken our minds, and we see no way out. With Matthew Arnold, we feel that there is no hope in the world, and that all we can do is to be true to one another. And then he goes on quoting some more poems, and then he argues how there is still hope in the world, and we should not be very pessimistic about it. I cannot go on reading. It's a long letter, and it's a long addressal to us, not only to Indira Gandhi. So this is it. I think I think India is more Nehruvian than it is Gandhian. Yes, we embrace Gandhi and his philosophies. We have idolized it. But in practicality, if you see Constitution, if you see the resolutions of Karachi Congress, which were put upon by Nehru, then if you see the objective resolution that he put in the Constituent Assembly in 1946, all those are embodied, became a permanent part of our Constitution. All those principles are embodied in our Constitution. And even after independence, the institutions that he built keep on guiding us, keep on thriving the idea of India. He in fact created the idea of India that we embrace today. So it's a must-read book. The conversation, or you can say a message given by a father to a daughter in the form of a story of the world, and in a very lucid language, in a very fluid language, very reasonable, very scientific. Especially in these times when Nehru is mocked, जहाँ पे हर बात पे नेहरू की पॉलिसीज को दोष दे दिया जाता है. आज आप जो गलतियां कर रहे हैं अपनी सरकारों में, उसको लेकर आप ब्लेम नेहरू को करते रहते हैं. स्पेशली इन दीज टाइम्स when his legacy is being questioned. इस तरह की एक किताब इन नेताओं में से कोई एक लिख के दिखा दे तो मैं थोड़ा मान सकता था कि इनमें से कोई उसको चैलेंज करने के लायक है, बट ऐसा होता हुआ दिखता नहीं है. So yeah, this is all about Nehru and his book. Thank you so much. Oh, I also remembered the name of the biographer of Indira Gandhi, which I forgot. Her name is Catherine Frank. So that book is also must read. It talks about the journey of Indira Gandhi and how she evolved into a political being, how she borrowed from the historic or glorious past of Nehruvian family, and what was her metamorphosis of getting into politics and capturing the power. So that process and then the phase of emergency, all that is very beautifully described without any prejudice. It's a very objective book. It also criticizes her policies. So yeah, Catherine Frank's Indira, that is also a must read. On that note, thank you so much.